Our guest speaker tonight is Craig Parry. He is a colleague of mine at Sony. He's a Sony ambassador. He is a really awesome marine photographer, largely underwater and any wildlife. The trip that Tim and I just did to Antarctica as part of the Sony ship, Craig was one of the other ambassadors. Absolutely adore his photography, and he's got some really interesting stories to tell us tonight. So welcome, Craig, and thanks for coming and chatting to us tonight.
Thanks, Robin. Well, I thought today that I would kick it off with a bit of an introduction to my career. So how it sort of all began and where it is now, and sort of how the progression's happened in the last 5 years has been big for me. I've been a Sony ambassador for 10 years, and that's 10 years this year, which is exciting. So time's flown with that, and it's been amazing to have their support. So what I've done is I've got a little bit of a display here that I can show you all. Now, I've been working with National Geographic now for the last 5 years, but I've put together a couple of slides here. You can read it, or I'll just talk to you about how each slide goes through. So over the past 5 years, I feel that it's been my biggest sort of footstep, my biggest progression in photography and my career, because I've been able to secure a position with National Geographic and start working with them on some of their biggest documentaries. At the moment, I'm working with Ryan Reynolds on a doco called Underdogs. We just finished filming down in Tasmania with a platypus. And it's a pretty diverse position, because I'm not just a photographer, but I'm also a underwater videographer and drone operator. I think I'll talk to you about my drone work as well, and how you, as a professional, you can't sit still and just rely on one sort of skill base to sort of keep up with your monetary needs. But so I've been working with Limitless recently too, which has been exciting. We've had Limitless 2, which is the next series of Limitless, and it'll be Chris's last one as well. So we've done a lot of traveling with that one, and it's been pretty amazing to be involved in such a prestigious sort of series. It was National Geographic's biggest, or most, it was the biggest budget ever spent on a documentary. So that was good to be a part of that sort of milestone for them as well. Yeah, that's Norway on the beach. That was minus 15 there, and it was sort of you don't get much time with Chris, especially when you got some heavy hitters around in filming, and big directors like Darren Aronofsky. He was there. He was the director for Black Swan, so he was directing this episode. Or he directed the whole lot of them, but he was only there for a couple of episodes on location. So I didn't get much time with Chris, but when I did, I had to shoot really fast. And in this particular photo, you can see here, I actually had my water housing on when I took that photo, and that was of the 24-70. So it created a really nice sun flare, and yeah, I felt it was a really, really good image for that show. So working with Nat Geo was a bit of an organic thing that happened to me. I had my gallery in Byron Bay, and that was a major accomplishment for me, because I was always interested in opening galleries. I had one in Lennox Head for 6 years, and Byron Bay was always that pinnacle of tourism and a place where I thought I'd sell lots of prints, and I did, but also rents and stuff were quite high there. So I closed that a couple of years ago, but I'm going to look at opening another gallery. But back to where I got this position with Nat Geo. I was working in the gallery, and one of the producers came in, and he had a chat to me. He goes, "Oh, we need a drone operator for this particular show. I can't tell you what it is, but would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah." And so he walked away, and then a couple of days later, I got a phone call. He goes, "Actually, we've been having a look through your website, and we think you'd fit the position for the photographer, because there's going to be surfing, and there's going to be lots of elements that your photography suits." And when that came through, I didn't really know what was happening, and I didn't know it was Chris. And I didn't know it was National Geographic. And then it was exciting because it was more of a test for me because it was an Australian part of the episodes, and we went up to the Barrier Reef, and we went out to the dam out at Rocky Creek Dam, just out at Lismore there, and we did 2 shoots there, and that was for them a test for me because if I didn't perform on both of those shoots, then I wouldn't have continued on through to Norway and so forth. So it was a bit of a test for me, and it worked out really well. The producers from London were really happy with my photography. And I felt having a skill base of water, aerial, and portraiture, because I used to do weddings. I started my photography career pretty much around weddings and surf photography. So those sort of skills over the years really helped me under pressure to get the photos that were required. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I landed that job. It wasn't anything special. It was just definitely having my gallery in Byron Bay open that door for me, and it was something that I've been proud of, and it's just continued on now, which has been lovely. A part of my business profile is also giving back to my community. So as a photographer, I feel, and especially because I'm involved with wildlife and nature so much, I sort of align myself with businesses that are looking after animals and supporting animals. So the Byron Bay Vet Hospital, they've got a mobile system that they did over the fires that we had a few years ago. So they've got a mobile system there. So I go out there every month and I dedicate 10% of my time to, which is about 4 or 5 hours a month, just gathering content for them. They've got, the last time I was it was 2 weeks ago, they had a peregrine falcon out there, and that was amazing to photograph that. It was injured and it's back into the raptor sanctuary, and it's going really well. So just being able to do those sort of things helps me in my business as well, because it sort of gets people just know I'm not out there, always trying to grab cash. I'm out there supporting things that matter to me as well. How my diversity, I guess the biggest thing for a professional photographer these days, and a lot of my peers, which I bounce off every week, we all, there's a few of us in the industry that sort of talk to each other about how the industry's going and what they're doing. And most of the, chat I hear is that everyone's either learning how to use AI or, especially the ones that are in the marketing advertorial landscape. Their AI is a really huge part of their business now, and you'd have to be silly not to be using it for what they're doing. So that's been for me. I've always been interested, and I've always done drone work. It's always been a big part of my business model, and it's probably bigger than it is. Like now is probably as big as it's ever been, because I'm using the Inspire 3 from DJI, and it's a drone that can handle footage that's relevant and okay for IMAX theaters. So I've been doing a little bit of IMAX work with my drones. So my current drone shoots 8K. So 8K at I think 60 or 50 frames per second raw. So that's over a gigabyte a second. So it's a lot of data, and so you need a lot of hard drive. So those sort of things for me as a professional photographer need to happen. Otherwise, I just couldn't survive on just the Nat Geo productions. That was for a Land Rover commercial. That's a heavy lift drone, and it's becoming more and more prevalent now that the Inspire 3 is taking all the necessity for those bigger drones away. So they're pretty amazing. I can fly for 30 minutes now. I can fly 5 kilometers away. I can reach up to speeds of 100 kilometers an hour. So these drones are very limited. I could only have about 8 minutes in the sky with those bigger drones. And they weren't as stable, and they were high risk around. So if I'm shooting just for myself, I'll be always shooting ProRes RAW, and it's probably half a gig a second. But then when I come home, I'll go through the footage, if there's something special there, I'll probably keep the RAW, but if it's not, I'll just compress it and make it into a 4K video and just keep it on my hard drive somewhere, just so it stores easy. And like just for instance, Tourism Australia contact me each year and ask me. They've just done it last week, asking me for vision that I've taken over the last 12 months, and then I just go back on the vision that I've stored at 4K, not RAW, so I can send that through to them. So that's another income stream that I have. Yeah, so drones, massive part of my diversification for my business. So I've got Byron Aerials now. I've got a website, and I pretend that I'm only attached as a pilot, and because I think that being a photographer, people look at you and say, well, if if you're a photographer, you can't be that good at being a drone operator and a videographer. So I try and separate myself a little bit from all my business models. Yeah, it's sad, but it's the way society is with skill-based professionals. I think if they think if you're not doing one thing all the time, you're not very good at other things. So yeah. Another thing, part of my business is I've created an e-learning program. So that took most of my time up last year. It's funny because when Tourism Australia asked me for images that I've taken the last 12 months, I went through my hard drive and I was like, geez, I haven't really taken anything last year. I was a bit concerned. I was like, what was I doing last year? And it was, yeah, pretty much my e-learning. So I've created this online course, which is, in my view, it's probably too comprehensive. I tried to fit everything in to one course, and looking at my peers doing it, they're doing more specific sort of courses. So they'll just have a landscape course, then they'll sell that, or they'll do an underwater course and sell that. On my course, I've got underwater, landscape, aerial, printing, editing, marketing. I've got fitness. It's a real a huge course, and I've just actually engaged someone last week to help me market it. I've had it out. It's been live for 6 months, and I've sold a few, but I haven't advertised it at all. It's just been, did a few webinars that I recorded on my YouTube channel that you can look at if you're interested. But yeah, there's really nothing. It's really the marketing part, I think, is so important because there is a lot of courses out there on photography. But yeah, I'm just hoping that in the next 12 months with the right marketing program, I'll be able to push it out there and make a passive income, and then keep expanding on my educational part of my business. So all the secrets from, underwater photography, you want to learn underwater photography, it's in there. So secrets like spitting on your dome port, letting it dry, all those things are in there that are really, for me, over the years has been trial and error. So yeah, and it also goes into it's funny because 2 years ago, I get peers that are very famous photographers ringing me up for advice, and I'm thinking, especially when it goes into drone and underwater, and they say they're professional landscape photographers, and I'm giving them advice, and I thought to myself, well, if these guys, some of the world's best photographers asking me for advice, then maybe I should be creating some educational sort of resource. So yeah, it's all there, but it's also ongoing thing. So it's not an expensive course. It's funny. I had a mentor encourage me to do the course. A very famous guy up here in Byron Bay who trains a lot of photographers and to getting into the e-commerce part of their training businesses. But he said to me to charge $3,000 for the course. And I was like, there's no way people are going to buy that. Because I look at other photographers like Paul Nicklin and those guys, and they're charging about $100 to $150 for the course. So I thought I might as well just start at $100. I started at $500 and then sold a few, but then now I'm just happy with $100, which will hopefully, be more of a volume thing for me rather than a large fee where I haven't got a large volume of people. So yeah, I'm just going to continue on that way and then always add to it. I've already added 2 more episodes in the last 6 months. I love doing behind the scenes. People like to watch me work as well. So one of the courses on there is actually me out on my boat talking to camera as I'm photographing whales, and they're priceless things too, because I'm out there and I don't realize that what I'm doing, but when I start talking my process out, there's things in there that you wouldn't be able to think of when you're in a classroom talking to students, or just just creating the course. When you're out there, you're like, oh, hang on, this is really valuable to my skill set. Like leaning over the side of the boat and keep my camera low to the water, or anticipating a movement from an animal. And that happens because of the amount of time I spend with animals as well. So there's all these things that I explain in the course when I'm out in the boat that are quite invaluable. So on from here, I've got some examples of images that I've taken. I don't know if you guys want to ask any questions before I step into this.
I was just thinking they might be able to use the chat. So if they're not brave enough to ask you a question, they can do it in the background in the chat.
Yeah, we might take some questions now because I'm going on to my photography now. I started drone videography and photography back before drones were even a thing. My father introduced me to a company up here called Robo, as a what are they called, like a Robo Air or something. And drones at that stage, it was 2011, and drones at that stage couldn't lift the 5D Mark, was it 2 or 5D? No, well, 5D Mark 3 couldn't lift it, and so I was using remote control helicopters to lift my 5D Mark III in the sky, and it had a cage, a massive cage around it with bungee cords going to a base plate, and then I put the 5D Mark III on it. And so everything that I've done, I've always made it so the quality is the best. Like, I feel like I have to every time have the best quality. Like, I'll always have the flagship camera, or I'll always have to have the best drone. I just feel like I've been working for Nat Geo. Like on my last project in Tasmania, we were filming platypus, and I was using the drone. They had 2 drones there for me. They had the Inspire 3 and the Mavic 3 Cine. And a lot of the time I'd have to use a Mavic 3 Cine because we had low profile areas where there was a lot of overgrowth from rainforests, and the bigger drone couldn't fly. But generally speaking, I'll always use the Inspire 3. I don't have anything smaller, and the Inspire 3 cost me 25,000. So I can't afford to then invest into a smaller drone. Like the Mavic Cine was about 5,000-6,000. So I just sort of thought I'll just put all my eggs in one basket. And so this particular shoot, this was Secrets of the Octopus, and it was a new shoot for me because I've always photographed the bigger sort of animals, the big pelagic animals. And when the production company came to me asking me if I'd be interested in shooting octopus, I was, yeah, I'd love to. But deep down, I was like, geez, I haven't done macro before. So macro underwater was new to me. So I just went out and practiced. At the end of the day, any fundamentals of photography will always work with everything. So there was no for me. I knew I could do it. It was just a matter of getting my lights correctly positioned, and then it was fine. So this one here, this was a coconut octopus. This was in the Lembeh Strait in Indonesia, and these particular octopus use a shell. They use like coconuts. They use these sort of any shells on the ground to hide in and protect themselves. So this guy was about to pull the shell together and hide in there and hide from me from taking photos. And I've got a shot up here with him doing that. Just let me just I'll get it. You'll see it in a minute anyway. Now
he's a tiny little thing.
Yeah, it's so tiny. Like I would say probably half this, about my fist, around about my fist size, or even smaller than that. they all come in different sizes, but yeah, they're generally about the same size of your fist, a half size of your fist. You'll see actually there's some images here that can refer to its size with the scientist's hands. So when I went to Norway with Chris, it was another part of my outside my comfort zone as well for my photography, because I rarely deal with cold water, and it was absolutely freezing. This particular surf session, it was 5 degrees, minus 15 degrees with snow, and so I've got a 8mm wetsuit on with a hood, just like Chris has got on, but I've got kelp wrapping around my feet, and it's totally outside my comfort zone. Probably physically not fit either. Like at that stage, I was, I hadn't been getting my running, and so that cold water and the cold air, and there was massive waves coming through, and that would take your breath away. But it was definitely, when you come out of situations like that and you get the great results, it's the most rewarding part of your career. I just always reflect back on those times, and they always put a smile on my face. So this particular image, I used the 24-70 f2.8. And this was shot on the A9, the original A9. So I wanted to go out there with speed, and it had a better low light ability as well. So the A9 allowed me on these overcast days to produce images without too much noise. Teaching people how to take water off their flat ports is really important. I remember when I was starting water photography, I think I was about 18 years old, and there's a pro photographer called Hilton Dawn, and he would, back then, it's funny because it was so hard to get people to teach you photography back then. They'd almost do things to jeopardize your your learning path, because it was such a competitive industry back in the late 90s and early 2000s. With that. So he told me to put some wax on my port, which everyone was doing back then. They were rubbing wax on their port to keep the water off their dome port, off their flat ports. But it was just creating that softness in my images. And so I quickly learned to just grab one of those shower squeegees, and I just keep one tied to my left hand, and I'll come and squeegee the front of the port. So the flat port, you really need, you rarely have a telephoto lens on a flat port. On a dome port. So the dome port generally works with a fisheye lens, 16-35mm, 12-24, something really wide. And you'll notice even with the dome port, most of the lenses will sort of match the domeness of the end of the lens. So most lenses that have a rounded sort of finish you will require a dome port. So those wider angles just allows you to get those almost 180-degree sort of aspects of the lens and the port without having any not as much distortion anyway. So if you're going into, say, a flat port, I use a 50mm 24-70. You can use a flat port on the 16-35, but I just find that the dome works much better. And 85mm, and then when really anything above 85mm needs to be out of water. So this particular shot here with Chris, if I was going to shoot that with any other lens, it would either be an 85 or a 70-200. Anything longer than 70-200 in the water is not going to work. They're just too hard to handle and balance in the water and float at the same time. Unless and also there's not many ports that can manage to have a 100-400 in them, or anything bigger. Having the ability to have your skill set, being able to shoot portraiture underwater, and have this as well, split shot. So adding that to your criteria of like being able to have the ability. Okay, well, I'm going to shoot Chris swimming here in minus. Was it minus or no? It was 3 degrees in a. This was a glacier-fed system, and it was so cold that I wanted to sort of capture the mountains behind Chris And he actually, in this particular image, he thought I was the finishing line, but there was still another 100 meters to go. So he swam up to me thinking this is the end, and he had to keep going past me, and he was absolutely delirious. So having the ability to split your shot. So this one here's on a dome port, I think it's an 8-inch dome. So nice and wide, just allows me to get my hit ratio a lot higher, having those bigger sort of domes separating the water, especially in an action situation where there's a lot of water moving around the dome port. In this particular image too, I would have been shooting at f/18. I would have had my shutter up about probably 800th of a second, and my ISO would have been incredibly high as well because we didn't have much light. I also would have been focusing underneath the water. So what I was doing in this position, I had the cameraman behind me shooting water as well. I would swim away from him, focus on him, then lock my focus off because I knew when Chris was coming past, I'd be pretty much the same sort of distance away. So it just allowed me, because you don't want, the last thing you want to do is have a very fast situation like this happening and the camera hunting for focus. You get away with it really easily with, say, a 1DX back in the day when it was 18 megapixels, but now we've got more megapixels. F/18 is, you can really still see the depth of field. You can still see that sort of blurriness on the top part of the image, but it's enough. You can probably get away with it using sharpening tools in Lightroom or Photoshop. But yeah, it's getting harder and harder as resolution's increasing to get that clean separation. I always look back on some of my whale photos and at f/18 on the 1DX, and you can't tell top to bottom on the focus just because the resolution's so low. So this is Chris and I walking back from that surf session. I looked through the images and I was extremely happy with what I got. And he was talking to me. I wasn't listening to him, so I'm the boss. You can see that. You don't see that very often. That's the 24-70, and it's a really big diameter dome, just so you can zoom into 70 and also zoom out and not catch the edges of the dome port. Sorry, the flat port at 24 mil. Yeah, so that's a big surface area to squidgy off. So you gotta do a couple of swipes on the flat port to get the water off. But you can see I've got the trigger there as well. I've got a handle that I'm hanging onto, and then there's also a trigger at the bottom. Especially when it's cold, I had big gloves on, so I needed as much grip as I could get with a trigger on there as well as a trigger on the housing.
That's Aquatech.
Yeah, that's Aquatech. I use Nauticam as well. Nauticam is for my sort of deeper stuff when I'm using strobes. And the Aquatech's great for using for surf, or if you want to go for a quick snorkel in the shallows. Yeah. This is Chris and Mick Fanning walking down the beach. So that was, the surf looks absolutely crap, and it wasn't very appealing to go in, but it made a nice photo with the snowy background, and Luferton and all those areas are very photogenic places. And if you haven't been up that part of Norway, I encourage you to, because well, they closed the town off for us for Chris, which is good. So yeah, we had everyone there, and we there was a other little town we stayed at where there's a harbour, and that was an amazing place as well. And yeah, it's always good to hang out with celebrities like that, because you get everyone sort of tries their hardest to please you. So there's the sauna we had, it's Dr. Peter Adia. He's a famous longevity doctor. So that we had this mobile sauna set up. In this particular image, I had to capture them talking, but then also the landscape in the background. So I did a composite image. So I took 2 frames, one with them exposed and the other with the background exposed, and then just cut out the background. Otherwise, it would have been impossible without having strobes in there. I didn't have the opportunity to have strobes inside the room. There's that image I showed you before, having moving really quickly. You don't get much time with Chris. He's, everything's really rushed, and that's another part. It's another challenge of the job is, finding the time to have him by himself without the film crew around or hassling you to hurry up. So as a unit stills photographer or key art photographer on set, you really got to work quickly and try and get the shot ASAP. And Chris, because he deals a lot with photographers and videographers, the patience isn't there sometimes. So you've got to say, okay, you can get it done really, really fast. Don't make errors. You can't get the exposure wrong. So yeah. So this is a part. So the good thing is when you're doing stills, sometimes you'll get the opportunity to take an image that they publish or promote the show with. In this particular one, Chris surfing was my photo, and it was in Times Square, and it was published everywhere. And if you look up Limitless on Disney, this image sometimes pops up as the banner for the show. So it's always nice to see and rewarding.
How's the remuneration work for billboards?
Well, that's the thing. That's the worst thing about working for Disney and Nat Geo is that everything you take, they own. So that's the downfall of working for that company. The monetary value is not there. It's more about the prestige of working for them, I guess. But it's it's funny you say that because the amount of money you'd get, say, if you took that photo and they published it in Times Square, say for Land Rover or Gucci or something, then you'd probably be getting paid $60,000 for something like that. This one here, this is Chris in extremely cold water doing a 10-minute static hold. I took that photo and Darren Aronofsky saw it, the director, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's going to be, one of the banners for the show." It never was, but I like it. I love the abstractness of it. And it really shows him freezing his ass off. So here you can see the coconut octopus with Alex. She was the scientist working on Secrets of the Octopus. She was the head narrator of that. So you can see the size, very small octopus, pretty challenging to shoot because I was down 20 meters on most shoots. And being a freediver normally, I don't normally scuba dive. So scuba diving for me is not as enjoyable as freediving. I like scuba diving, but freediving is much more, I feel, much more liberated freediving. But scuba diving was fine. I was at 20 meters. It was a challenge. It was, we all had COVID during this shoot. So there was situations there where I got a bit of vertigo when I was coming up. So some scary things happened. But doing 4 or 5 dives a day at 20 meters gets really tiring. But it was really enjoyable and it was outside my comfort zone. I really enjoyed doing it. This particular image was taken on the what's that lens? That would have been the 90mm macro, and I had the lights positioned over the top of the subject. So I've got these big arms on my water housing. I sort of reach over, and then I've got another one that sits sort of at 45 degrees coming in, just so it illuminates the subject evenly. It's like having a mini studio underwater. This water was extremely dirty as well. It's a very polluted place up in Indonesia, up in the Lembeh Strait. A lot of plastic in the water. It was a very challenging, and any movement on that black sand really stirs it up. So this image here of Alex, so I had to get some images of her just working, looking for octopus. So creating a split shot here of her swimming around looking for octopus with a dome port that was taken on the 12 to 24mm lens from Sony. Once again at f/18, and I was really happy with the focus point of her and also the boat. Everything was quite sharp. So it was. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends. I guess it depends on your lighting as well. I do, when I go to Tonga, shooting whale split shots, you're always going to have a higher ISO of 800, even in crystal clear water at f18, and your shutters speeds always going to be compromised. So you got to try and keep your camera very still, and hopefully the subject doesn't move too quickly either. Always sun above you. Sunset, sunrise is always challenging when you're doing split shots. You get a lot of reflections inside the dome, so and also the water visibility is a lot better when the sun's directly above your head. So that's one thing. As a photographer, you know, everyone's like, "Oh, I hate the middle of the day," but as a water photographer and doing split shots, it's an important part of the day to be shooting. So once again, there is the coconut octopus hiding out. It's extremely small, hard to shoot. You have to lay low without making that fine sand come up and ruin your shot. There's a shot of Chris with a freediver that was teaching him how to spear fish in one of the first episodes on fasting. So here's some nature-based photos. So with animals, I'm generally either using a telephoto, say a 300mm, 100 to 400. Haven't received the 400 to 800, but I'm excited to. 24 to 70, 70 to 200 are pretty much the only lenses I use outside of the water to capture my wildlife imagery. Yeah, I got rid of the 200 to 600. It wasn't sharp enough for me at 600, so I'm hoping the 800's sharper. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna be a heavy lens, I think. But it'll be fine. It'll be a lens really only I use if I'm in Africa or you know, shooting birds on my monopod or something. So so this particular image was on the 70 to 200. Yeah, 70 to 200. These are sort of the afternoons which I die for as a photographer on the boat. I'll go out in the middle of winter with only hours left of sunlight, and you'll get these really low winds up here in Lennox Head, Byron Bay, and you do in Sydney as well. But yeah, these are the sort of the afternoons I love, where there's that magenta on the horizon, and then I always, what I tend to do with this particular image, I'll follow a whale for that hour and just pray that it starts performing next to the boat. There's nothing worse than not having a whale and you know and it becomes sunset and it's, you know, you haven't got anything to work with. So this one here was just flapping away, and it was yeah, beautiful. I was just praying for a breach, but it didn't do it. But it's still, I'm happy with that image. And that was probably shot at a thousandth of a second at f2.8. Now off to Africa. I shoot. I like to stay low to my animals in Africa. It's always a challenge, especially when you're shooting from, you know, from a car. So in this, I was lucky on this particular image. My guide walked out with me, and I had the 16 to 35. I put the tilt screen out, and I put the camera low. And this particular female tried to charge us, so we ran back to the car, and the guide tripped over. It was just like, it was like the worst possible situation. We both got back to the car okay, but yeah, it's really difficult to get a really nice shot of an elephant shooting from a car. So it's nice to have that sort of low profile aspect with the rainbow in the background. This one here of a clownfish. This was shot actually on a 24 to 70 under natural light. So this was taken on the barrier reef. The bommy, or the reef that I was shooting on, was only 2 to 3 meters below the surface. So I was working with a lot of natural light. And I was shooting at a really high frame rate because these particular fish love to scoot in and out of the anemone. And so it's really hard to get a good shot of them. You always get a side profile, but to get them face on like this was quite rare, and I really enjoy it because it has a little bit of a comical part of it, especially being Nemo. And this particular image was taken with the Inspire 3. This is the good thing about the Inspire 3 is it's a 50 megapixel camera, and I'm pretty sure that it's the same sensor as what's in the A1 as well. So it's nice to have a sensor of that size and quality on a drone instead of having to fly a heavy lift drone with a mirrorless under it. This particular image, it's not the full frame. This isn't the full frame because it's 16:9. So this one here has been, I don't tell anyone, but this one's been shortlisted in the Australian Geographic Photo of the Year. So that'll be released, I think, in June. So I'm hoping that goes well. I've never made the finals in the Australian Geographic competition, so it's going to be nice if it performs well on a 35mm lens. And I also had to clarify with Australian Geographic too, it was under permit. So I had to send through my permit because it's shot at 65 meters. So I had to show Australian Geographic that it was under permit, that I have a proximity of 20 meters legally. So that was good. So that was, I really enjoy that shot. I've always been fascinated with whales and dolphins working together to socialize.
Is that a national parks permit, or who gives you?
No, it's a Commonwealth waters. So you got to be at 3 nautical miles off the coast, and then you're at no man's land there, or you're in Commonwealth waters. So you've got those abilities to jump in the water and film close proximity and aerials as well. And that was one of the loopholes for me with Migaloo. Migaloo was I thought Migaloo was a special whale in Commonwealth waters as well, but in Commonwealth waters it's a normal whale. So my permit for him was the same as a black and white whale. Like, I haven't got a big boat either. It's only a 4-meter inflatable, and it's pretty funny watching me go out because I've got it's like a Samsonite bag which DJI give you for the Inspire 3 that sits on the front of the boat, or sort of front center, and I've got I got my 100 to 400 or my 70 to 200. I've got 2 cameras there. I got my GoPro set up. And when a whale comes and I know it's going to be a good drone shot, it's a struggle for me, but I've got to unpack the drone. I've got to put the camera on it and take it off from my hand. There's all these elements that go into failing to crash in the drone, but I manage not to. I manage
There's a bit of a swell as well. That's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, I'm quite calculated. I've been doing it for a long time. I was catching remote control helicopters out at sea on my dad's boat before drones, so that was a lot higher risk. I tell you, no GPS in those things. Yeah, so Migaloo, I'll show you a photo of him up in a second. So
Okay.
yeah, so this particular image, this one here, is one of my favorite turtle images. Its fins are being cut off because of the crop factor on the screen, but this one here was shot with strobes at a 12 to 24mm lens. Yeah, I just love the symmetry of animals, and I like working with them in symmetrical positions. That's what I love to do. Sort of takes them into art then. Like this one here, 3 pelicans on the beach. Playing with shadows is a fun thing to do with drones. If you all got a drone out there, it's try and use the sunrise to capture moments like this. So I go into this on my workshop as well, my online course. But shadow play it's a bit of trial and error, especially with seasons and the angle of the sun. Sometimes the sun's too far to the north, too far north to south. So I've sort of got dates in my calendar and times when I know that the angle of the sun's going to be perfect. I just also look at the information on my photos as well, if I haven't written them down, the time and date. But yeah, so what I was doing on this particular image is I was working with an architect on shadow play, and I had to get a runner running up a beach, jogging, and use that profile of her jogging up the beach of the shadow and tracking along with video. And then as I'm flying back to my position, I see these 3 pelicans. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I switched it over to photos. Yeah, I was doing shadow play when I first started drones. in 2013, after remote control helicopter stuff. And I was shooting another real estate gig in Byron Bay, and I saw this guy walking up the beach with his surfboard, and got him, and that was great to see his leash and everything as a shadow. It was really, really beautiful. So part of, like I go to Botswana most years. I love going to the Okavango Delta and just taking the boat and with students and teaching them photography, and just being able to have that access with, with the animals, being so close to them, they're feeding and drinking the water, and just having that ability to sort of get nice and close on the boats. My favorite thing about being on the Delta. So it's really challenging to get those little low profile shots. There was a time last time I went, I put a tripod down with a remote, and I put that on the ground, and we drove away from it, and a lioness came up to it, but I forgot to change the focal for some reason. I don't know what it was, but it was on manual focus or something, but I got the focus point wrong, and it didn't focus. It would have been the most amazing image. She came up to it, sniffed the camera. So that's another thing. If you're over in Africa, it's always, if the guide's pretty relaxed, he'll let you put a tripod down with a remote trigger, which you can get some good stuff. So staying low like this one. This is probably on the 400mm f2.8. I borrow that from Sony every time I go over there. The 600 as well, f4. So this particular image, I'd always been doing split shots, and when I went to Tonga for the first time to photograph humpbacks, was 2013. It was always a vision of mine to get. I always thought, well, I want to get a split shot of a whale breaching, and I worked out that's impossible because there's too much water moving, and if you're going to be that close to a whale when it's breaching, you're probably going to die. So this spy hop was probably the next best thing to a breach. It was great because it was sort of, back then Instagram was new, and creating split shots for me was quite new as well. I was excited to do it. So in this particular shoot, I was 100% split shots the whole time. I didn't really change my settings off F18. And I got some remarkable photos, and one of the photos had won underwater photo of the year. And so it was a really rewarding moment. And this one here is one of my favorite photos I've taken. And it's never actually won an award. And I thought it was always wanted, always deserved one, but it never did. So this one was shot on the Canon 1DX at 18 megapixels. So the sharpness between the bottom and the top is just it's pretty much on tack. You can't really tell the difference. I haven't seen a split shot of a spy hop that good before, and it's just the difficulty of getting it, having the whale facing you with its stomach like that, with its pecs out is just, I've been trying to get that same photo or a better one since, and I can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know what they're looking at. And shooting different lenses. So that one there was shot on the 28mm with a fisheye converter on it. So that was a fisheye lens shot. Oh, sorry, that was the Canon fisheye. Sorry. This particular image here would have been the 16-35, probably at 35mm. So if you're going to shoot whales or most pelagics, bigger animals, you would either use a 12-24 or a 16-35. Now, 16-35, it doesn't matter if it's an f4 or an f2.8, because underwater, you're never shooting at f2.8. You're always shooting apertures above, say, f6. If you shoot below f6, you'll start to receive a lot of softness in the edges of your dome port. So just be aware of that. So f6 is really f3, or it magnifies a lot. So if f2.8 underwater is probably f1.4. It really changes it a lot. But it also is probably distortion on the acrylic or glass of the dome port. This is the first image I ever took using strobes. This is when I was experimenting with strobe. This was shot with the fisheye from Sony. This is on the A7R2. This was the first Sony I owned. And so, yeah, really, really excited to be able to play with strobes and create that artificial lighting underwater. Creates these really dynamic scenes. Yeah, so I was one of my biggest sellers in my gallery. When I had the gallery, I'd have that 2 meters wide in the gallery when people walked in, and yeah, it used to sell really, really well in Byron Bay. So it's a reef off Byron, just near the pass. So it's super accessible for anyone coming up to the pass if you want to go snorkeling. It's only in 3 meters of water, no sharks, and yeah, beautiful spot. So this is Migaloo. Back to the story about the white whale, and so this is Migaloo. This is one of my I don't do many limited edition pieces, but this is one piece that I've made limited edition, and just because of the rarity of it, I don't think he's alive anymore. It's been 6 years since anyone's seen him up the east coast of Australia. And I saw him, this was the first time I saw him, and this face to face. And then after that, I saw him 2 years in a row, which is a really rare thing, because just to see him once was a needle in a haystack, but to come across him twice more was amazing. So this particular image here was taken on the fisheye from Sony 28mm with a fisheye converter, shot at f7, 7.6. Well, it might have been more. It might have been f9, and he stopped in this particular image. So he paused in front of me, and made a massive whale song. Like, went, and it vibrated through me. So in this image here, not just has a visual aspect, but all for me, but also has the experience of having that sound resonating through my body. So it was it's a very special image to me, and to capture this image, my dad was in the boat when I photographed him. So having my father there as an experience, everything sort of lined up, and it was a truly a magical moment. And they're the moments that you hold on to as a wildlife photographer the rest of your life, and you've got those to talk about to you. Yeah, so it's a special one. This one here is another one of my favorites. I shot this down at Kangaroo Island, and I've always been fascinated by really calm water and the visual aspects it gives you with reflection. And this one here, I'm just hanging off the bow of the boat, and this common dolphin just came up on to dance with the boat, and a photograph with the sky reflecting off the top. So that's, yeah, one of my favorites as well. That's shot with the A1 on the 16-35, with a very sharp, when you're shooting off the boat, when you're moving quickly, you really need to have those fast shutter speeds. So that's probably at 2,000ths of a second. That would be a 3.2, ISO probably 400. Yeah, that's my online course. And you can scan that code if you want to have a look at it. It's 30-day money back guarantee, which is important too, because it creates trust with your students, that they're getting what they paid for. So that's available. Anyone wants to have a look at it. If you want to just scan that and you just want to trial, I've got a trial episode on wildlife, and it's me just talking about what lenses I'm using on the boat, and what settings I use to photograph humpback whales breaching. Yeah, so that's my little presentation. And this is funny, this penguin shot I captured on the first day of my trip in Antarctica, on my first time in Antarctica. And so it really, my expectations were so high. It's always the way though. When you don't really have any expectations of a location where you're shooting and you get an amazing experience, you just think that's normal. And then every time afterwards, you're like chasing that incredible moment. There we go. Be back here. Be one of the light. There we go. So that's the image there. Everyone can see it. That's one of my favorite images. That was shot on the Sony A1 at 600mm f4. And I knew as soon as I took it, I got it. You get that rush of adrenaline, and you understand because every frame, either side of that frame's out of focus because the camera's trying to keep. And you
what's
see,
that, a thousandth of a second?
no, that was at 3,200th of a second.
1,000, okay.
Yeah, it was ISO 800. I kind of wish that I had a 400 mil for this. I just feel if it was back a little bit more. But yeah, it was hard. 600 mil is a really hard lens to shoot in Antarctica. I wouldn't probably use it again over there. It was just too tight for everything. But in this case, it worked. Oh, Trudy, thank you. You can highly recommend. Yeah, Trudy came on one of my trips a few years ago. It was lovely to have. Thanks, Trudy.
It's not a job, it becomes a lifestyle. And your work is just all consuming, you're doing it all the time, you're always on duty. It's not something you go out to do. It just becomes, it's what you are.
That's right, exactly. And it's funny because you don't want to do anything else. Like for me, as you are a sole trader. And it's always in business. It's always up and down. You have to reinvent yourself or get left behind. And it's not easy being a professional photographer. Like work's not always coming in, especially if you've got kids and a family. And you got to provide. Help provide for them. It's always a challenge because as you get older, there's a lot of hungrier younger people out there being really proactive on social media and cold canvassing as well, and doing things for cheaper. And so you've really got to have your finger on the pulse, and it's a hard sort of hard to keep up sometimes. But I'm trying to reinvent myself in the sense of marketing myself with my artwork and my workshops. So, I feel that's one thing that sort of I've left behind is the marketing part of my business, which I shouldn't have over the years. So that's something I'm working on personally at the moment. It's to stand out. You've either got to be traveling all the time, having new content. It's really challenging for me because I just had a baby 6 months ago, and I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I don't have the ability to go away as much as I used to. So this year I'm trying to do a little bit more. I'm off to Fiji with Tourism Fiji in a couple of months, and that'll be good, taking the kids with me. But yeah, it's just getting away as much as I used to is a harder thing until the kids have left the nest. It's going to be it's going to be a bit harder. Yeah.
I hope it's just not the kids and the wife goes as well.
Oh yeah,
Right. Well,
that's good.
yeah, I think
Thanks, guys.
We can let you go.
It's been awesome. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
what's great is we get all sorts of different people presenting, and that's the great thing about it, that people get to see what floats people's boat as a photographer.
Yeah, that's right.
And some people are out there, it's a job, and they 9 to 5. Others, like we're saying here, it's a lifestyle, and it's a good insight. It's great.
Thank you. No, my pleasure. Thanks for everyone for coming. Thanks, Rosie. Thanks, Leanne.
You've got a fan base now.
Yeah, great. And I'm also putting together a tour. Still trying to get the finer details, but if anyone's interested in polar bear tour next year, up in Manitoba in Canada, it should be. I think it'll be a really attractive workshop. I think it's such a beautiful part of the world.
All right. Well, there don't seem to be many questions. Everyone's stunned by the excellence here, right? So
yeah. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Guy.
Thanks for your time.
Guys, take care. Have a good night.
It's great. See you, mate. See you soon.